world of finance, it's confusing to people, right?
78% of us could be living paycheck to paycheck. Most people think, I'll wait on money. I'll wait till I'm older and wiser. It's actually the opposite. You're actually in your prime with money in your 20s. You start your career with a power of 16. Our multiplying power halves every 10 years. I have 3 steps for making money freeze.
I really want to know what it means to you to live a good life, not just a successful one.
The place that I want people to arrive with their money, which is fund your purpose.
So today we're diving into a conversation that every entrepreneur needs to hear. Every person probably needs to hear. So much of the advice out there is about, the hustle, the grind, but we need to talk about how to serve yourself in your life. And one of those things is money and how that can serve you without draining your life, your mentality, and all that good stuff. And so we're going to be talking to Scott, and he's here, and I'm really excited to have him here. But before we welcome him, there's a question that I want to ask you, the listener and the watcher, before we get into this conversation. Just have this question on your mind, which is, what's one money habit that you're ready to change this week so you can thrive with more purpose? Drop those answers in the comments below. And give us your takeaway and your spiel of that question. And I am now, like I said before, excited to have you on the Thrivable Journey. Scott, welcome to the podcast, man.
Oh, Michael, thank you. So good to be here. Appreciate it.
Yes, absolutely. And, finance, it's confusing to people, right?
Oh, yeah.
But before we get there, we often ask questions of our guests, kind of an intrinsic kind of question. And I really want to know what it means to you to live a good life, not just a successful one for you personally.
Yeah. Well, I like to talk about kind of the goal, the place that I want people to arrive with their money, which is fund your purpose. I want people to get to that point of funding their purpose. There's so many barriers and distractions and pitfalls and snares and traps that want to keep us from getting to that point of funding our purpose. And I want to help people get that freedom and that financial peace and to be healthy with their finances and balanced with their finances so that they can get to that point of being free with their finances to not only take care of their everyday needs and their family, all their obligations, all their bills, but beyond that. What's over and beyond that? And that's funding your purpose. I believe we're here on this planet for a reason. And having that column of our life figured out, the money part, where there's available funds to put towards what our dreams are, what we feel like we're here to do, that's what I want to get people to. That's the goal.
Yeah. Now, when you say financial peace, are you saying PIECE or PEACE?
Yeah, PEACE, to have that place where you can sleep at night, where you can feel like your life is aligned with your finances. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. A lot of times we're mismatched. We don't have that peace. We feel stress and pressure, even guilt over finances, intimidation. There's all sorts of feelings coming at us because our behavior, we may have been misbehaving the last few years. And so putting off getting things in order. And so that's what I like to help people with is give them a simple plan, get them motivated to start behaving with their money. And I know I needed that wake up call myself.
Mm-hmm. I think you're speaking to just most of probably everybody that's listening to the podcast that we don't really look at the understanding financial literacy as it being financial literacy. I think in high school or elementary or just as growing up, like we don't get that piece in schools. I remember the only financial advice that I got from school, and I'm born in 1977, was how to write a check.
Yeah, and how many people do that anymore these days?
And that's not even a thing, right? I think under my bed I probably have like a stack of old checks, or something. But when we talk about financial literacy, people don't necessarily know that. Well, they probably know it now, right? Like financial literacy, I need to have financial literacy. Can you speak to the minds of people that want to get the understanding of financial literacy and really want to know how to take that first step?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for much of my life, I grew up in a family that didn't really talk too much about finances. In fact, my mom said when I was growing up, talking about money is like talking about your underwear.
Mm.
And what she meant by that is it was a private topic. We don't
Yeah,
talk
people
about
don't want to talk
that.
about that.
Yeah, we're not going to boast about our bank accounts. And that's certainly what she was getting at, the
Mhm.
pride factor. But if we don't talk about how to do money, which is a totally different thing from talking about how much you got or how much you make, if we don't talk about how to operate with money, we could be silently suffering. And that is absolutely what's happening, because there's a few figures here. 78% of us could be living paycheck to paycheck. And that is an enormous amount. 77% of us are in debt, or somewhere around $100,000 each on average. And then as far as financial literacy goes, we are having trouble passing a basic financial literacy test in the United States. So all of these things are pointing towards a low understanding of finances. We're just not taught how to operate with it. So in addition to the schools that you brought up, I then look to the parents. And many parents don't feel equipped to be able to teach their kids finances. Because if they are in this 70 some percent, bucket that's struggling with finances themselves, they don't feel like they have what it takes to teach their kids. They don't necessarily want their kids to repeat the same mistakes that they did. And so here you have the current generation that may not want to pass it down. And then you have the younger generation that has no idea where to get that information. And so that's why I come along. I studied to become a financial coach after I decided, hey, I'm gonna get over this hump. I'm gonna learn this myself, right? So many of us, that's our only opportunity, is to self-learn and to go seek it out. Where do you go? I took a 9-week course that taught me the basics. And then after that, this was unexpected. My wife called it an obsession. I got so into money and understanding it after I got over that initial hump. It wasn't so bad. And when I realized that it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, I just went for it, because I was like, this is great. This is easier than I thought. And I started thinking in the way that money is. At first, it was a disconnect. I
Mhm.
didn't understand it, and then once I got it, I was like, let's keep going. Let's get this. We make about 1.5 transactions per day for the rest of our lives, and it's like, we need to know this stuff. Why aren't we learning this earlier? Well, we talked about it's just not in schools, and parents aren't equipped. But we owe it to ourselves and our families to go out there and get that information, because it's just such a huge part of our life. We're going to
Mhm.
work for 40 years and earn money, and then we're going to retire for 10 to 30 years and spend it. And so I spent 3 years writing this book, Financial Epiphany,
Yeah.
to put all the ideas in one place and and share it with others. Once I got my act together, I wanted to help others get there as well.
Yeah, I've seen some of the things that you've done. All right, well, what's online, but I will talk about that in a minute. But one of the things that screams at me when you're sharing that is
Mm.
generational. And then for me, I'll just speak for myself. I'm sure I'm proxy for a lot of people. Is that you said you don't have someone really sharing financial literacy with you or understand the finances, period, from parents that say, hey, you can't talk about money. It's like talking about your drawers. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Um, like, so breaking that cycle is probably one of the biggest things that we could do right now. Yes.
Oh yeah, you got it. And without that, let's see. I'll tell you some of the things that I heard. The furthest I heard about finances was invest in your 401k. There's free money, but it wasn't really anything beyond that. And so when you have a statement about that, you might take some action. But I acted timidly because I didn't have any details. I didn't have anything to measure this by. I didn't know if I put in this much, what was going to happen. And so when you don't understand something, like you don't have a metric or quantification, who's going to go out and jump in with both feet,
Hmm.
wholeheartedly? You don't. You act timidly because you say, oh, this is a maybe, maybe not thing. I'm kind of lukewarm about this. And I got a lot of messages like that where there just wasn't that quantification. And that's why I hungered to quantify some rules of thumb. I worked on 3 rules of thumb that as far as I knew and learned those, I was going to be able to do well with money for the rest of my life. And then I wanted to make sure that it was so simple that I could share those with others so they could do the same. So it could be that simple because the generation to generation thing, it's just, there's a disconnect there. And I'd love to, part of what I'm doing here is I'm trying to equip parents to do well for themselves and to teach the younger generation, and then also teach the younger generation themselves. But let me tell you one thing. When you're in your 20s, the last thing you're thinking about is, I want to go all in on saving for retirement. I mean, you've got your school, you've got your classes. If you're thinking about money, you might be thinking about your student loan. You're thinking about your car, your first job, your relationship. And after that, immediately, you're thinking about marriage, your first house. Where am I going to live? Here's my first job, I gotta start getting the corporate culture, whatever it might be. There's so many things we're inundated in our 20s. And that's why I like the idea of being a coach to someone then, because it's like, you look at this person and you say, you've got this amazing ability with money that you don't know about, but I'm going to come in here and I will tell you exactly what you need to know. Because if you don't use this ability now, like an athlete missing out on being a quarterback or being a pitcher or being this or that, because they're so skilled, they cannot see it, but you do. And so that's why I like to come in and point that out and say, bam, here are these 3 financial epiphanies, these rules of thumb I'm going to tell you about. And then that's when people say, I didn't know that. I had no idea. Bam, I'm going to take action. I'm like an athlete that is now connected with understanding my ability and my skill. Let's get going on this.
Yeah, I think one of the best things that you could get in life is a good coach. I mean, coming from the world of sports myself is, like I ran track and field. That was a thing that paid for my college and took me through past college. But,
nice.
As much as I knew about the sport, I still needed to have a different perspective. And when I got a different perspective, it would cut my time down because there's some things that I still didn't know. So a coach definitely supports you in really giving you a different perspective and elevating your mental acuity in whatever it is that you're looking for. And right now we're talking about financial understanding and literacy, and having a coach would be significant. A significant difference.
Yeah. A good coach or mentor sees what you can't see in yourself. They see down the road, your potential. They've walked that road typically themselves. And so to have someone pulling you rather than you staying right where you're at, it's an amazing thing to have someone like that's pulling for you.
Yeah. So you have a little history here, and you were in the field of communication and design for 25 years. Are you still in the Fortune 15 company, or you?
You got it. Sure am. Yeah, I head up a video communications department, communicating to 300,000 plus employees worldwide. And so I am constantly taking big messages and distilling them down to just the essence of what people need to hear. That's what I'm doing day in and day out. That's my full-time role. And so when I realized there was this issue of communication in finance, people not getting the message we were just talking about, I realized, okay, we don't need to inundate people and overwhelm people with all of finance, because that's causing analysis paralysis and overwhelm. People are not acting, and they tend to freeze when there's too many choices, and because we just don't want to mess up from where we're already at. And so distilling a message is my role. And I call myself an imposter because I come into the world of finance, even though I've been studying it 10 years now and did become a licensed coach and spent 3 years writing the book. But I come in from the side because some people, when they're talking to me, they say, you're just like me. You have a job just like me, but you figured this out. Well, yes, because once again, communication is what I do all day, every day. And when you come in sideways looking at finances and you see there is a communication issue here, don't tell everybody everything. Just tell them just what they need to know to start succeeding. And when they do, you teach them the basics and they start succeeding and looking at that over time, then they get excited about it and want to know more. We can become more savvy with our finances down the road. But what we need to do is get started, because the biggest factor in all of this is time. We need to let things roll for a while. And when we see those results that it really does work, then you start ramping it up. And that is exactly what happened in my case.
Yeah. So what inspired you to bring that new worldview of money?
Yeah. So because I like to look at things creatively in the communications field, once I got over the hump with understanding money, I started to think to myself, I was reading books. I mean, 20, 30 finance books. I was on blogs, websites, taking classes, workshops. I was doing it all. Once
Yeah.
again, my wife says I get obsessed about things. Bam. Got really obsessed
Sometimes
about
that
money.
works.
Dove right in, wanted to figure it out. And so once I started learning, I found myself writing in the margins of the books.
Mm.
And the joke is that I started writing so much in the margins of the book that it was about time to write my own book. And really, what a book can do, and I've been told, is that a book not only is learning what someone else has put their heart and soul into for years to get this word out. So it's this compressed 200 pages. It might take you 8 hours to read the average nonfiction book, but someone worked years on that. This is the best of what they know, and they're passing it out to the public. And so you're learning. But the other thing besides learning this person's compressed best ideas is that it triggers your own. And that's what happened, is that it started triggering my own. I started to ask myself, why don't people teach it this way? Why don't people communicate it that way? I like simple. I like unconventional. And so everything triggered me again and again and again while reading these books towards a simple set of unconventional answers. And that's where those 3 rules of thumb that I call financial epiphanies, they arose out of all that study over several years. I started to put them into practice. And once again, when that time passed, I looked back and I said, this is working because it's math, and math is very reliable. You know, it doesn't change. It's
No,
math is math in that, you know, what is being added or multiplied is you're always going to get the same answer. And so when I realized that it was working over time, that's when I really refined and distilled these rules of thumb to get it so anybody could understand it. And by writing a book, it forced me to figure it out. The words, the branding, the order, the names, all of this, so that once it's locked down and it's in this book for all time to come, that this was a well thought out tool, and it wasn't just happenstance and a fleeting thought. It was something that's time tested among many people and myself. And I'm so excited about the results. I was like, I can't stop to share this with everybody. I want everybody to succeed. And the last thing about that is, even though I have a unique, simple, and unconventional approach to teaching money, and there are others that are very straightforward. There's some that are, you might feel like you're talking to an accountant. There's some that are, you know, they're very relational with money. And I'm creative and unconventional and simple. And that's going to be right for some people. It's going to be exactly what they need to hear, like myself. And when my message connects with others, it's an amazing thing to see the lights turn on. Other people, it might not be for them so much. So I feel like there needs to be this pie of several slices to teach money, and people take the piece that's right for them. So I'm just putting one more piece out there to choose from.
Yeah. Well, I was watching the video and you made it really simple. Was it the one with the magician or something? Or
okay, yeah.
That was that one. There was something that's from there, but you used a Rubik's Cube to really break it down and make it really simple. And I think the essence of what I'm trying to create.
Here's my visual to go with that. Yes.
For people that are just listening, he has a Rubik's Cube, and just kind of create context. You, in the world of making things simple, right? You started to understand, like, I think you were challenged to understanding how to make the Rubik's Cube match all sides, and you had an epiphany there. Can you talk about that? That was very interesting.
Yeah. Before the 3 rules of thumb comes the simple framework. And what I like to do is I like to take something we understand, something we've seen before, something we get, like a Rubik's Cube. It's one of the most proliferous playthings in the world. And 4% of the population knows how to solve these things. There's 43 quintillion possible combinations, which is 2 sets of zeros and commas beyond a trillion. And so we know that you can't just figure this thing out very easily. Most people wouldn't be able to do that. But if you figure out a system, which I didn't know before, I used to pick one of these out of the toy shelf, fiddle with it, put it back down. Year later, pick another one up, fiddle with it, put it back down. Have no idea what I was doing.
Right.
And then I learned a simple framework. I learned someone taught online that you solve the bottom, then the middle, then the top. And I had no idea that was the order. And so my son challenged me to learn this thing. And I knew I was either going to fail him and he was gonna show me up and learn it himself, or I felt like another fear was that I was going to not be able to help him, and then we both would fail. But what ended up happening was we both succeeded and were able to figure this thing out. So bottom, middle, then top is the trick with the Rubik's Cube. The parallel to finances is just like there's those 3 steps for the Rubik's Cube. I have 3 steps for making money freeze. And by that, I mean, there doesn't have to be 43 quintillion ways to do money. There can just be one. How do you make money freeze? Because it's like dancing around us with all these roving variables, like, oh, when did I start and how much is it earning and all these things. What does it turn into? We have all these questions with money that we can't lock down. And so I locked it down for people. I said, let's just look at the most common scenario. All right. The average person starts their career at age 22, could be 21. Could be 23. Let's lock it down. We're going to lock it down at 22. And the average length of a career, 40 years. And the average rate of return earned on investments such as a 401k retirement account, IRA retirement account, a brokerage account with index funds, these really accessible ways of investing, 7.2 is the most amazing rate of return because it's a fairly normal rate of return, meaning when you put $1,000 in, you're getting this 7.2% back after a year. And then the next year it compounds and you get another 7.2% on top of all of that you earned the prior year. And when that keeps on happening, money doubles. Money doubles every 10 years. You put in $1,000, and if it's gaining that 7.2%, 10 years later, it's 2,000. It's doubling. And so what we got here is this 1, 2, 3 steps, start at age 22, work for 40 years, earn a 7.2% rate of return. We froze money. So now there's this series of 3 things that we can understand after that. The first epiphany being that money can double every 10 years. That is one of the most simple concepts that we could ever understand money with. Now we know, I never knew what was happening to my money if I invested it. Well, if I get that 7.2% rate of return, money is doubling, which is super simple, doubling. Every 10 years, everybody's favorite number is 10. It's the easiest number to multiply, subtract, divide, and add by. Right. Now we have this simple rule of thumb we can use for the rest of our lives. Money doubles every 10 years. I should put it in. If it's going to double in 10 years, I'm going to put this money in. I know what's happening 10 years from now. That is empowering.
Yeah, it is. When you were talking about that, and this is the extreme part of this conversation, which is I was thinking about a graph that I seen the other day, and it was Warren Buffett, and where he started, like, I don't know, $500 or 5,000, whatever it was. And they showed his graph, for how it accumulated and grew over time. But that's one of the things that even as an employee or employer that you can really take on to grow your money. And if we're talking about retirement, you want to do that because when you're like 60 and 70 or whatever, you need some money to allow your life to continue to live when you're not, working for the money.
Yeah, that's right. I love that you referred to Warren Buffett. He's definitely one of my favorites as far as showing what works over the long run. He's also got some of the most amazing sayings. One of the sayings that I like from Warren Buffett is, don't bet against America, meaning invest, because you're believing in, say, when you invest in the S&P 500, you're investing in the 500 top companies of the United States. And we work at those companies, and those companies have the incentive to succeed and to innovate and to do well and to earn a profit and to get revenue. And so I used to hear that the stock market was gambling. And that was another thing that I heard growing up. And so I needed to get over that and realized, it's actually, the stock market does go up and down, but it's believing in the businesses of America, which I do believe in. And I work at one of those big companies. And so that's definitely one of the big points to get over with Warren Buffett. The other thing is there's this curve. It's called the exponential curve. It's a curve that starts out with barely anything happening, meaning you're putting money in and it looks like nothing's happening. But then it starts earning and earning and earning and earning. And it starts getting steeper and steeper and steeper, meaning every year that passes by, it's the same thing that you put in is earning you more and more and more and more. Yeah. And seeing that exponential graph, it works for some people. It does. Some people like me, I see that and I'm like, all right, I can put money in, and 40 years later, it's going to be that. I'm taking action. But let me tell you, that's called being later minded. And most people are not later minded.
Right.
We want it
Exactly.
now.
Yeah.
We are now minded. Yeah. We want instant gratification. And so knowing that the population mostly steers that way, that's why with the second epiphany, I steered it that way. I did have an aha moment. I was actually sitting at the dining room table. I think my feet were up on a chair. And I was just pondering. I just said, there's some people I know. And I'm like, this whole money doubling every 10 years, that excites some people, but most of them, it doesn't. So I was like, how am I going to explain this? So this is what I did. Instead of looking at money just doubling every 10 years, I looked at what happens throughout your career, which is 40 years. So you extrapolate on it. If you put in $1,000 and it doubles, 10 years later, it's 2,000. Let's keep going. 10 years later, it's 4,000. 10 years later, it's 8,000, doubling every 10 years. And then finally in your 60s, when most people retire, it's $16,000. Now, those numbers, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, those numbers are numbers to remember. They are doubling numbers. And when we got those in our head, it's called cognitive chunking. When you take these numbers and you just remember them, you don't have to know everything in between what's happening. But you tell yourself every 10 years, this money is doubling. So if I put in $1,000 when I start my career, it's $16,000 when I retire. That's starting to create an association that wasn't there before. We now know the input and we know the output. Okay, so now that describes that curve. 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 is just getting steep. And that money is multiplying more and more as it's doubling larger amounts as time passes. But once again, that's later minded. So this is what I did. I flipped that chart in my head, sitting at the dining room table. I flipped the chart in my head and I said, what does that mean now? If I flip this curve so it's steep now and shallow later, what does that curve mean now? And this is what it means. It means you have a multiplying power. You have an ability right now. This is no longer about money that's going to grow later. This is about an ability you have now that is actually going to diminish. And the parallel, once again, to bring up athletics, is just like athletics. NFL football players, they're at their peak around 26. Olympic ice skaters and gymnasts, they're going to reach their prime somewhere around their early 20s as well. So many sports, we reach our prime in our 20s. And we know in our 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, it's not going to be the same. This thing is going to diminish. Absolutely. Right? So here's the deal. Most people think, I'll wait on money. I'll wait till I get promoted. I'll wait till my paycheck's bigger. I'll wait till I'm older and wiser. Isn't that when I'm supposed to get good at money as well? I can put this off for 20 years. It's actually the opposite. And so that's what I like to tell people is that we're busting through this myth that money, you're best with it in your 20s, right? When you start your career, when you have an earned income, that is when you should blast it into your retirement account as much as you can. And you should be preparing for that day, but we're not. So that's why we need to coach people to tell them you're actually in your prime with money in your 20s, right when you start your job. Because now when we flip that chart and we use those same numbers, you have the power of 16, the multiplying power of 16 when you start your career in your early 20s. 10 years later, it halves to the power of 8. What? I just lost a multiplying power of 8 in my first 10 years? That's how it works. And then the next 10 years, it drops from 8 to 4. And then 4 to 2 and 2 to hopefully 1 where you're retired in your 60s and enjoying the fruits of your labor. But when we do that, so the financial epiphany number 2 is that we start our career with a power of 16. We just put a number out there. We put a number where nobody has applied a number before because we're daring to tell people this is about what happens under the most common circumstances. Remember, we made money freeze. And financial epiphany number 3 is that our multiplying power halves every 10 years. And that creates a sense of urgency when you realize, well, I start with 16 and then it goes to 8, 4, 2. Like, I need to act now. And that's exactly what we need to do with money. We need to act now. Most people, when they're retired, they say, I wish I could go back. I made a mistake. I didn't save enough. I wish I could go back and do this over again. They also say, I wish I knew then what I know now. So why don't we listen to the retired people? There's the retirement crisis going on. We should listen to that. It's called crisis for a reason. People are not retiring with enough money, and we got a whole slew of people that are following up with that too. It's time to listen to what they're telling us. It's a small voice. The big voice is buy, advertise, marketing. You need this now. What's your Facebook and Instagram life? But we need to listen to the quieter voice of the retirees and say, they're telling us to say big now. It's not a big voice because there might be some shame in that. They're not announcing it. Hey, I made a huge mistake. You should do things differently. But we are being told that, and the surveys and the polls are saying that. So if you're in your 20s, you've got this awesome multiplying power. If you're in your 30s, you still got it. Power of 8's amazing. Let me go all the way to the power of 2. There's some countries in the world where money doesn't multiply at all. We live in a place of prosperity. And Warren Buffett, back to him, he says, if we're born here or moved here to the US, we've won the ovarian lottery. Meaning we've been born into prosperity. We've been born into a place where money just gets on a train, moves, it gets off, and it's double, it's quadruple, it's multiplied. We live in a place where that is happening, a place of innovation and prosperity. And so I tell people, even if you're in your 50s and you just get started saving and investing right now and your money does double, that's amazing. It's kind of like if someone was to work a week of work, you get paid for that week. That's what you signed up for. Now, if you work that same week of work and your boss says, you've been good, I'm going to actually pay you double. I'm going to pay you 2 weeks worth. Everybody would be ecstatic. We'd be like, I'm going to celebrate. It's steak dinner tonight. It's a vacation. Honey, let me treat you to this. Let me treat you to that. I just got paid 2 times of what I was supposed to get paid. And that's what it's like to have money double. But here's the off the charts thing. When we have the power of 16, it's like working that week of work and getting paid for 4 months. That is so insane. And people don't get it until I explain that. Working a week and getting paid for 4 months, and working another week and getting paid for 4 months. That's the power of 16. It's kind of like winning the lottery, but we don't know that it exists. We need to be coached to understand that power when we're starting our jobs. So that's the message. Those are the 3 epiphanies. And that's the word I'm spreading.
That's powerful. What I get from that is like a little bit of reverse engineering. And what's powerful too is that when you're younger, you have more just abilities, strength, and the ability to just to save your money and do all that good stuff and still enjoy your life in the 20s. But what I also get is that it's not taught.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that really kind of throws people off when they have to wait till they're 40 and they're like, wait a minute, is it too late? And if it's not too late, I don't know what I'm doing. And so I think people get kind of caught up in that world. And you may have said this already, but can you speak to the 40-year-old, the 50-year-old that may be listening and watching and that have that kind of thought that's running through their brain?
Absolutely. Well, I'm right there with you because I did not start studying finances, and really getting it till midlife, middle age, mid-career. And so that's most people. In fact, let's talk about why. Why do we wake up then to finances? Well, there's certain things coming. Yeah. Number one, maybe we have kids and they're going to go to college soon. And we're asking ourselves, how are they going to go to college? Like, is somebody saving up for this? Oh, that's my job. Maybe, unless they take a loan out. Another thing is we're starting to think about retirement. We're like, oh, I've worked 20 years. There's 20 more to go. Let's see how my retirement account is doing. Oh, there's not as much in there as I wanted to be. I better start doing something about this. Another thing that's coming up around midlife is we may have parents that are aging. We talked about most people not being upright with their finances. Our parents might need help with money as well. Medical costs can be quite large in retirement, maybe $150,000 to $200,000. That's a pretty big medical bill over the years. And we may start realizing that our own parents need help. There's all sorts of other things that'll hit, but those are 3 really big things that hit at midlife. So we start to wake up and say, well, I did say in my 20s, I'd start figuring this out later in life. Okay, I did get promoted. Okay, my paycheck is bigger. With all these other things saying, green light, learn this stuff. Let me start learning, where do I go? Who do I trust? Now I have more money. I'm making more money. I don't know who to trust. I don't know where to go. And we don't have that default place to go. That is why I do like to teach earlier. And that is why I wrote this book, to get a message out there. And that's just the start. And so I love how you're educating your audiences through podcasts, this and that. And I listen to a bunch of online material to learn as well, and hear real stories. But yeah, so for folks that are midlife and older, the multiplying power, it's still there. Multiplying power 4 in your early 40s, that's incredible. We just talked about how even if you are multiplying your money by 2, that is an amazing, amazing blessing, that you put the money there and you're not working for it. They say it's when your money's working for you, right? That's what it's called. And to have that money working for you is just the most incredible opportunity ever. And we need to be thankful for that, because there's other things we can do. We can ramp up our hours, do work on the side, start a business, or even work longer years, right? If we really feel like we're behind. They also have the catch-up contributions when you save in some of these tax advantage vehicles like the 401k and the IRA. And you can put even more away at the time that younger people cannot do. You have access to more tax advantage funds that grow even more older in life. So they kind of know that the government, that is the IRS, allowed for that. So they kind of know that a lot of people are waking up to finances. And so they gave us that advantage then. But once again, count it as a blessing that money doubles. And then do what you can. You have all these levers and variables you can pull. But here's the other thing I really like people to recognize, is that we have a purpose for ourselves, and hopefully our finances are going to help us fund our purpose. But we also have a responsibility to the younger generation. And so, yeah, there's that old saying of, hey, each generation should be doing better than the previous one, right? That's the old American saying. Is that going to continue to be true? Not sure. But it's happening. I'm 4th generation. My great grandparents were the first ones here from Japan to get to the US. But it's been true every generation. So all 4 have been doing better than one before. Why? Because the previous generation taught them at least something. And then, out of what I heard about money, guess what? My teenage son, he's learning what I knew, like middle age. He's learning it now, and he's 16. He's got like multiple times more than I did, and he's in the stock market already. I taught him so he wouldn't be afraid. I was like, I was afraid of the stock market all the way up until, middle age.
Yeah.
I started teaching him, at age 11 or 12. So he just thinks it's normal, and he's invested, and stocks don't scare him. And he sees it grow, so he knows that money doubles. In fact, his college savings plan, I showed him as it was happening. I said, hey, we're going to take a look at this money growing. And when he saw it double, which it did, he's had enough money to go to a state school since he's been 9 years old, because we just put it in early and doubled. And that's the thing. When someone coaches us to say, I know it sounds strange, but if you act robustly now and you set this money aside, can you imagine what happens when that doubles? You can now plan. You can now calculate these things and say, okay, my kid's going to go to school and that's how much it should cost. I just need to save half 10 years later because it should double. Well, you can get even more aggressive and say, what if I save 10 years earlier than that, 20 years earlier? Then you save half of a half, because it's doubling and doubling again. And I didn't know this principle 20 years ago, so I didn't do that. But that's why I'm telling other people, so that they can get ahead of things. And my son, certainly, it's passing it down. He's going to be way more knowledgeable and comfortable with money than I ever was. It's all about teaching that younger generation, because we've missed the boat a little bit. I could have done way better if I had started in my 20s, just gung-ho. I didn't. And so my money grew slower, but it was still, I'm still very thankful for my dad's advice to invest in that 401k. But my son, the next generation, he's outdoing me already. It's at least at that age. Him at 16 is probably me at, late 20s. That's what we can do for our kids and grandkids.
Well, I had to do some studying here. So one of the things is, according to Education Data Initiative, the average parent pays off their child's college loans in their mid-40s. But you saved your son's college by the time he was 9, like you said, right? Which is a powerful story by itself. And I think that people, we just as a nation, and I can't talk about the world, but just as a nation, we just need to really educate the next generation after us. Like you said, the generation before needs to really educate the generation that comes after.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that we could start solving now just by sharing the information.
Yep.
Taking your kid or your nephew or whoever it is, our niece, and showing them what's happening with the money. Here's your college education. Now, this is what I've done with it. Here's the stock market. Like, this is what we can do with it. And don't make money be a scared item.
Mm-hmm.
As people say, they say, scared money don't make money, or something like that. Don't be fearful of the money. And you talked about purpose, and we're talking about money meaning purpose. And
Yeah.
we're talking just as a general, how can people connect their financial goals to their larger sense of purpose?
Yeah. So let's go back to the college idea where money can be freed up if you save before rather than wait till later, right? So the average amount borrowed for college is about $40,000, and 60% of students are going to take out some sort of loan. The money's not there as they're going in. So if we're borrowing $40,000 to pay it off, somewhere around where you said folks might be in their 40s or so, 10 plus years later after college, that's about a $50,000 bill total if you add all those interest payments on.
Mm-hmm.
So for a $40,000 education, we're paying $50,000. But if we go the other direction, that's to pay later, the right to pay later.
Mm-hmm.
But if we were to save 20 years earlier, we're only putting away $10,000 because 10 doubled into 20, 20 doubled into 40. So for something that's worth $40,000, most of the folks are paying $50,000 for it. But there's this opportunity to only pay 10. So when you do that, only pay 10 or only pay 20, and it multiplies into what it needs to pay for it, there's all this kind of quote unquote leftover money now. Let's say you put in $10,000 and it paid for your kid's college, grew into what it needed to. Now you have, compared to if you paid later, you have $40,000 extra money that you got to keep and do something with. Now let's put that towards our purpose. And if we keep on doing that in life, we keep on planting these trees that grow and the money grows into what it needs to pay for this and cover that cost. Now we're planting a financial garden. Now we have these plants that are growing into trees. And what's a tree do? It can do so many good things. It can create shade and comfort for somebody. It can create fruit and sustenance for somebody. It can be cut down and chopped into wood to build a house and shelter for somebody. And as you're growing this financial garden, you start different accounts potentially. Like there could be a retirement account, a college savings account. Another account I'm a big fan of is something like a custodial account for your child. It's not college related. It's just this fund with index funds and single stocks that can grow separately apart from college. But you can have all these separate accounts that are simultaneously growing. And that's the money that's available because you didn't go buy something and pay too much for it and go into debt. Because when you're going into debt, someone else is earning compound interest. Someone else is taking your money and they're doing the multiplying for themselves. You're actually giving your power away to somebody else when you're in debt, right? They're making more money. But when you keep it and when you grow it and when you multiply it, now hopefully there's a surplus we want to build to put towards your purpose. And so what might that purpose be? Well, there's a ton of good causes out there, nonprofits. I actually am part of an organization called Created to Create, and our specialty is filming videos for nonprofit organizations. We just went to my family, so my wife and son and I, we went to Sierra Leone in West Africa with a medical team, and we filmed a video of what they do. That video is going to raise hopefully tens of thousands or 100,000 plus in funds to support this organization to keep running so they can build schools, churches, and clinics to help the people in that impoverished area of the country. And we would not be able to do something like that and be as available for something like that if it wasn't for the freedom that came from operating with money the way we do. Maybe we could do it later in life, but we're doing it now because the money is there. The money's been freed up and it has multiplied to be able to start funding our purpose. And I want to encourage other people to do the same. When you realize you have a multiplying power, you're less likely to spend. You're more likely to say, well, I know what's happening with the money now. If I put this $1,000 in, I know it's going to turn to $8,000 later. Like, I should go ahead and do that. Now I have something to compare it to rather than going for instant gratification.
Yeah. One of the things that I was thinking when you said that is that there's a lot of people that want to live a philanthropic life. And this is one of the ways that people can do it practically, and can really, that in turn can really help, organizations that you give that money to grow and help that. And it could, I'm not saying it could be a kumbaya kind of world, but you can really help sustain the world with your nice deeds, with financial support, with organizations that may need that, and really support that world of philanthropy and well-doing just in the world. And I know people get fulfilled by that. Right?
Oh, absolutely. If I can continue a story, same organization, Bridge of Hope. First time I went there, I've gone to Sierra Leone twice. I was invited to the fundraising dinner. The video was going to play there. And I was sat at a table near the front. And I was like, oh, this seems like a place of honor. What in the world am I doing here at this table? And I was sat next to this really tall guy, Ernie, with a cane. And I thought, what would he and I have in common? I have no idea. But I said, hey, Ernie, like, who are you? And why are you here? Come to find out, he's the one that sent me to go. He's the one that paid my way. He paid for my vaccinations. He paid for my travel costs, the food and the lodging. He paid for what I charged to do the video. And I just realized it then. I was so floored. I was like, what in the world? This is like, I feel like this is my uncle here, and I'm just meeting him for the first time.
Nice.
I practically had a tear rolling down my face at the time. So we watched the video. The video shows after all these other things are shared during the fundraising meal. He turns to me and he says, Scott, that is the first time I've seen that video. He said, my wife and I drove here today with a number in mind that we were going to write a check for. Check, huh? And he said, don't tell her, but I just doubled it. And I was just like, it was the most glee and joy and elation I had ever experienced in a human being. I looked over at him and I was like, this guy is living the high life. He was able to just not even tell his wife, double what he was going to give. He had already sent me to another country across the world and paid for everything, including my 100 hours of working on this thing altogether. I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a sponsor. It changed my life, realizing that there are people out there that they treated their finances in such a way that they could have generosity to that degree. Because that was generosity upon generosity. He sent me and he just doubled his gift that day to support this amazing organization. I was so floored. And I continue to tell people about that because I'm like, wow, I don't know if that's going to be me one day. I certainly look at Ernie and say he's a role model for me. I want to be like that. I didn't even know that was possible. That feeling, people, you don't remember what people said, but you remember how they make you feel. And that left such an impact on my heart that I continue to just want to have that as my goal. I want to be Ernie one day.
Exactly, right?
That's the idea.
Still writing checks.
That's funding your purpose. Funding your purpose. That's what it's like.
That I felt that story, and that's really fulfilling as well. And just he didn't know whenever. So just to say, like, you start at 20, and you just don't know when you turn 50 and 60, and you're able to do that, or whose life or lives that you'll affect, and really cause a shift in their life. You never know. You just never know. And I do want to bring the mindset before we get to something practical, which is, it says studies show 90% of money decisions are driven by emotions and not logic. So how do you help people shift their mindset from like fear to confidence with money?
Yeah, the main message we get about money is to buy. We're the biggest marketed and advertised to country in the world. $400 billion spent per year. That's about $1,000 or more per head in the U.S. Even the babies, and no one else can compete with us on that. I don't know if that's something to be proud about, but along with being advertised and marketed to, the main message about money is to spend and to buy and to acquire. So we look all around, and there's this idiom, keeping up with the Joneses. That actually was an old comic book, or old comic strip, I should say. And people opened up their newspaper and they read this comic about this guy, Aloysius, who looked like the Monopoly man, a monocle and top hat and all that.
Yeah.
Short guy. And he was constantly trying to look like his actually wealthy neighbors, which he was not. He was trying to acquire what they were acquiring and look how they were looking, and he was competing and comparing. And so this idea of keeping up with the Joneses, which is we look at our neighbors, we look at our coworkers, we look at our family members, those people in our circles, and we want to look like them and have what they have and maybe even beat them and one up them. Mm-hmm. And that's a race that's not worth running, because really if we know that most people are struggling with money, we're actually putting out there a front that it doesn't have anything behind it. Mm-hmm. And so maybe they're doing that in debt, getting that car. And I feel like I got to have that car too, but I'm actually extending myself and going into debt to get the same thing. And it's this race where we don't know what's happening under the hood. Mm-hmm. And so that's the deal, is when we know the statistics that most of us are struggling and most of us are putting up a false front and racing a race that we shouldn't be, only because the retailers and the creditors and the banks allow us to, because they are profiting off of all of this. We have to choose to turn things around. So, all right. So to get more into kind of the psychology of it all, we talked about keeping up with the Joneses. Another psychological barrier is earn more, spend more. And that's called lifestyle inflation, right? So when you earn more and get your raise, good advice is don't spend more. Actually, go ahead and save that. Yeah. It's like exercising this muscle where you are able to divert new money, extra money, gift money, raise money, whatever it may be, promotion money, towards saving, because you already were used to living how you were used to. Yes, there is inflation, but it's the idea that we funnel money into multiplying, just like we said, multiplying money. It's amazingly gratifying. In fact, I have a saying that instant gratification lasts a day, but financial wellness is gratifying every day. And really, when you have that money saved, you feel good every day. I did the right thing. It's growing. I'm going to be able to fund my purpose, or I already am. But instant gratification, when you go buy something, you got to go buy something else the next day to get that feeling again. And then you buy another thing the next day to get that feeling again. And the silly thing about buying stuff, we're just like children when you get a new toy, but you end up playing with the box. It's like, we actually don't care about what we bought a year later. It's like gathering dust in a closet somewhere. So when you talk about psychology, there's all these things. There's this shame, guilt to get over. And probably the most welcoming idea to all of this is that we're all doing it. We're all in this together. But we all have a duty to ourselves to realize it and turn it around. We're not supposed to go all sitting on the edge of a cliff together just because that's what everybody's doing. Because we know a pandemic or a job loss or a health issue can cause the edge of that cliff to crumble. We don't want to be there just because everybody else is doing it. We got to pull back, stand on firm ground, and tell ourselves, all right, I'm going to turn this around. I'm not going to spend like that anymore. I am going to save. I am going to multiply these funds. My future self depends on it. So there's a ton of psychological barriers to work through. Paying off debt is the biggest one. I recommend the debt snowball, which is if you have multiple debts, pay off the smallest one first. Maybe that's a credit card. And now with the money you saved from there, pay off your other credit card. That might have been a little bit more money. And then, all right, what's the next debt? Is it a car loan? Well, you just stopped paying on 2 credit cards. You paid them off. Use all that new money to pay off your car loan. And then you keep going from there. Okay, the student loan, let's take care of that one. And finally, the big bad boy, taking care of the house and paying that one off early as well. Debt is a risk. Debt is your things. If you do not pay that debt off, they can be repossessed. They can be foreclosed. They can be taken back. And so I highly recommend getting rid of your debt. Just get rid of it. There's so much freedom. And once again, that term financial peace by having things paid off. And so that's also motivation to not get into new debt. Live within your means and don't spend more than what you make. But yeah, that's just a list of some of the psychological barriers to get through to make a difference here and free up a pathway to multiply. That's what I'm trying to coach everybody to do is let's get past these barriers that we've been dealing with, and then let's go full force on multiplying, because we got a life to live and a purpose to live out.
Yeah, totally agree. You said so much within that. Give me one practical step that someone can take right now to get to that next level for their life.
Yeah. I like to call it the silver bullet when I tell people about the financial epiphanies, because it's one thing to hear, oh, don't spend that. Oh, cut up your credit card. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that. And a lot of times, because we're mismanaging our money statistically, we don't want to hear that. We don't want to hear, don't do this, don't do that. That's why I come in like a coach and I tell people, you have this ability. So I tell people, find your multiplying power. Okay. So let's say someone's in their early 40s. Okay. That's the multiplying power of 8, right? That's what we said, 20 years after you start your career. So you got the multiplying power of 8. So I tell people, just find out your multiplying power. That's the takeaway. That's the starting point, right? You just start with that. Now you know what your ability is. And I like to say, this is you. You have ownership over this. This is an ability. This is not about multiplying some sort of object, this money thing. This is about what you can do, because as you multiply this money, you're going to choose not to spend it. You're going to choose to get rigorous about getting out of debt. And remember, you're funding your purpose. So this has so much meaning behind it. That's the takeaway. That's the one thing I would do is find out your multiplying power, and then you can act on it. It's like being told, here's your ability, here's your athletic ability.
Scott, people need to get in touch with you, man. How do they do that?
Yeah, the URL, the best place to go to is financialepiphany.com. On there, there's a link to the book. I got some of the lessons up there. Once this podcast is up, I'm going to put a link on the speaking page. There's a free download on some of the basics, such as how to get out of debt, how much to save for retirement, how to start your first IRA, Roth IRA account, retirement account. Mm-hmm. And then there's a contact page, and I check every email and respond to them. So if you want to get in touch, that's an excellent way. So financialepiphany.com.
Perfect. Scott, you brought so much just clarity, and you made it simple, and just listening to you made it simple. I talked to or listened to a lot of people that are in the financial world, and they can sound very complicated, and it kind of turns you off a bit, right? And just the way that you shared yourself, your knowledge and your expertise, it's really easy to follow you. It's really easy to really digest and understand what you have to give. And
nice.
For my last question for you is, what's something on your heart and your mind that you would love to share with someone as your last words on this podcast?
I want to make sure I review with everybody. So the most valuable thing is, tell them what to do. And then once again, you got to repeat it, tell them what to do again. So I'm going to end with that. And so to repeat the 3 financial epiphanies, under common circumstances of investing, money can double every 10 years. That's the first epiphany. Financial epiphany number 2 is you start your career with a power of 16, the ability to multiply money by 16 times. Financial epiphany number 3 is our multiplying power halves every 10 years. That's it. Once we know those 3 things and we're equipped, that's all you need to know about money to do quite a bit of damage in a good way. Yeah. And get to that place of funding your purpose. So that's what I want to leave people with. That's it. That's the most important thing I could say. That's my message.
Perfect. I love the message. I love the fact that you had what you had to share, because it's a really great perspective, fresh and wonderful to hear. And I respect you for that, and I thank you for that. And for all those listening and watching, make sure that, if you really need to get that fresh start, check Scott out at the website. And I don't know, you do coaching via internet?
Yeah, coaching is, I would say, the book right now is my main product that's out there. As far as actual coaching, I just do it right now. I just talk to people.
Okay.
Yep. I just do it.
Like right now, you coach this right now.
Coaching via this podcast right now. And I coach people as they ask questions. And it's just that's the business model right now. It's my passion project. I'm just out there to make a difference. It's going to have more form and structure down the road. But yeah, if someone wants to talk, I'm going to talk to you. Let's get our finances straight.
Let's get the finances straight and teach the next generation.
That's
Again,
right.
Scott, thank you for being on the podcast. And as we always say, let's make thriving our new normal. We'll see you next week.